What's up, Node.js developers? Welcome back to a new live stream. Today is Friday, and today I'm coming at you with another project-based build. During this project-based build, we are building fun mobile applications that you most probably are using or that you know about, and by doing that, we are improving and getting better as mobile developers. So today, what exactly we're gonna do? Today we are gonna build that Tesla mobile application. Unfortunately, I don't have a Tesla, but I really want to feel the Tesla mobile application in my hand. And because I have the skills to build this application, let's go ahead and build it together today. So what we're gonna do today, we're gonna start with a home screen of this application that has a very minimalistic but at the same time beautiful user interface. We're gonna render all of these items starting with a header. We're gonna work with images. We're gonna work with views. We're gonna use a lot of flexbox to make to arrange everything on the screen. We're gonna also work with flat list for our list of options here. And what's more important is that we're gonna build a multi-page application. So we're gonna also cover navigation. So for example, if we press on this climate, we're redirected to a new screen for managing the climate control. And on this page, we're gonna get a bit more in depth and we're gonna learn about props, how to send data to custom components through props, how to manage data, for example, this temperature using state, and a lot of other exciting parts of building mobile applications with React Native. So yeah, this is going to be a super beginner friendly tutorial, and I'm going to have like this step-by-step guide that is going to be easy for you to follow, and it serves as a getting started point and as building your first React Native application. So for that, we're gonna learn how to get started with Expo. We're gonna learn about how to build beautiful user interfaces, how to style them, how to work with basic components like views, texts, icons, flat list, and so on. And actually these are, I call them basic components, but when you're building big applications, you're actually working in 99% of the time, you're working with these components in order to build these huge user interfaces. So if you master them today, you're gonna be it's gonna be easier for you to build any kind of applications in future. As well, we are learning the latest best practices. We are using Expo Router, which is a new file-based navigation system. We're gonna get into a bit more details about that once we get there. But yeah, in general, I hope it's gonna be a fun project for you to follow along, and you're gonna enjoy it as much as I enjoyed putting it together. As always, guys, in order to follow along, I have prepared for you that step-by-step guide that you can find in the description of this video. So if you go to the description right now, let me do it here with you. So yeah, if you scroll down in the description, you should see the step-by-step guide. So open it up on the side of this live stream, or this video if you're watching it not during the live stream, because it will contain all the snippets, all the steps that we're gonna follow, and it's gonna be easy for you, for example, to copy paste the commands from here. However, we are going in every detail. I'm going to try to explain every single step in order for you to actually understand how this is built, not just to copy paste code, because that's not gonna help you understand and learn how to build mobile applications. So with that being said, let's go ahead and initialize our project with Expo, and then I'm gonna say hi to everyone in the chat. So by the time I'm initializing it, guys, hello, how are you doing? Let me know where are you joining us from today. We have people watching us from everywhere in the world, so let's see the geography today. While I'm waiting for the messages, let's go ahead and start by initializing our project. And as I said, we're gonna use Expo for our application. So let me go ahead, close this application, because we're gonna start from scratch, everyone together. Let me put it here. So for that, let's open a terminal window. I'm gonna zoom in so you can see. I'm gonna navigate to a folder for my projects, and when I'm there, let's go ahead and initialize our project. To initialize an Expo project, we are gonna use npx create expo app. This is the new way of initializing Expo application. So with this approach, you don't have to have Expo CLI installed globally. Even if you don't have anything installed on your machine, only Node.js and npm, that's the only prerequisite for this project, then you're going to be able to run this command and it will ask you to install it on the go. So npm create expo application. I'm also going to add the @latest in order to take the latest version of create expo application CLI. I want to start from an example that includes the router, so I'm going to give an option -e with router that is going to use a template that contains already all the setup for the router, and it's going to make a couple of steps much easier for us because we don't have to install and set it up ourselves. It's going to be there by default. And then let's go ahead and give a name, Tesla application, press enter, and then npm will do its job, will download and extract all the files, and will set up our project for us to be able to start working at it. Hi guys, let's see, how are you doing? What's that? Hello from France, hello. Dallas, Texas, hello. Colombia, Argentina, Uganda, Ukraine, Kenya, Turkey, Vietnam, hello guys, Ghana, so many people. Are you excited for this build, guys? We have done a Tesla clone probably 2 years ago, one of our first projects, and that was a huge success on the channel. Everyone loved that application, but that application was kind of building the Tesla website as a mobile application. But today we are actually building the Tesla application, the one that controls your car. So yeah, it's going to be exciting. So now we see that our project is ready. We see this, your project is ready. So what we have to do next is to open this project in our editor of choice. In my case, that's Visual Studio Code. So I'm going to simply write code and Tesla up for the name of my project, and that will open automatically the project in Visual Studio Code. If you don't have this shortcut, go ahead and simply open Visual Studio Code and manually find, do open folder here and manually find the application in your file system. Okay, so now that we have our Visual Studio Code running, let's go ahead and, before jumping into the code part, let's go ahead and run this application on our simulator. For that, I'm going to press on the terminal here on the top, new terminal, and let's go ahead and write npm start. Simply npm start will start the development server, and when we see all of this list of commands, that means that we are ready to actually run our application on a device. If you don't have Android simulator or iOS emulator, that's not a problem. The easiest way to run an Expo application on a device is to go ahead and download on your physical device the Expo Go application. It's available both for Android on Play Store and for iOS on App Store. And once you do that, scroll up a bit until you see this QR code, scan the QR code with your phone, and you're going to have application running on your physical device in your hand. So with this approach, you don't have to install and configure anything. Like, it's the easiest and simplest and fastest way to get started, and you have the application running on your phone. I'm gonna press on I here to run my application on the iOS simulator here on the right, so that you can also see it. But this also requires, for example, to have iOS simulator, you have to have the Xcode installed, and that's only available for on macOS system. Or if you want to run it on Android emulator, in that case you have to go through the Android Studio setup. So that's a little bit more, a bit of time to set everything up. But once it's done, you'll be able to run it on emulators and simulators as well here. Okay, so what do we see? We see a welcome page, welcome to Expo. And what does it say? It says start by creating a file in the app directory. Well, if we look at the folder structure, there is no app directory. And the only thing that we see as the entry file in this project is this index.js. This index.js simply references Expo router. And yeah, that means that we are working with an Expo router application. I'm going to explain you in a bit how it works, but let's go ahead and simply press on this button on our device, touch app/index.js. And if we do that, we see that right away we have a new folder automatically created magically by the Expo router in our project, which is called application, and there we have an index.js. So how does it work? Expo router, as I said, is a file-based navigation system, and what it does is every file inside this app directory will automatically be managed and generated as a route in our application by the Expo router. So what does that mean? Yeah, basically the app index is our homepage. That's why we see here hello world. And if we open index.js, yeah, this is the code for our page here. So yeah, we're gonna see later in the video how we can create more screens, how we can navigate from one screen to another. But long story short, it's pretty easy. We just create files, and those files are automatically created as routes where we can navigate to in a similar way as you would do with a static web website. So yes, in the following steps, we're gonna work in this page to create our homepage for the Tesla application. But before that, I'm gonna do one small step. I'm gonna press on these curly brackets at the bottom where we see JavaScript, and I'm gonna press configure JS config. This is a very optional step in order to get rid of these red arrows below my view and so on. So you can ignore this, but I'm gonna set it up, and in this file, I'm gonna say react/gsx. Then I'm gonna save this file. It creates this jsconfig.json in the root config. And now if I go back to the index file, I don't see those warnings anymore. So yeah, now I think we are ready to get started. Okay. So if this is the first time you are working with React Native, the way it works, like in our index.js, this is our React component. And what is a React component? A React component is a simple function, as you can see here, function page, that will return JSX. This syntax that you see here, this is JSX. It looks very similar to HTML, but it's actually not HTML. It allows us to render components on our screen. So for example, a view is a simple container in which we put our stuff. A text component allows us to render text, and we're gonna see in a moment how we will use other components like an image or a list to render different type of components on the screen. Below we see the styles object that is created using the style sheet, and the styles are simple JavaScript objects that again are similar to CSS properties. For example, you can see that flags, align, padding, and things like this, these are a similar concept with CSS properties. The only difference is, yeah, like we are the way we are writing them. It's not justify content in a snake case, it's justify content in a camel case like this. Again, we're gonna slowly learn these properties as we need to implement them. For example, if we have to change the background of this container, we can go ahead and write a background color. And here, if we say gray, that's gonna make our background color of the page in a gray color. Let me grab quickly the, in the guide, I wrote the color of the actual application of Tesla application. So that's 161818. And yeah, that looks more like the Tesla clone. Okay, so before we jump into the implementation part of the home screen, because we are ready to do that, let's go ahead and quickly see the plan, like what are we planning to render there. So if I scroll down a bit until we see this screenshot, this is the screenshot that I downloaded from the App Store, and this represents the actual Tesla application user interface. So there is a lot of things here on the screen, but the way I think about before starting to actually implement a user interface is, let me just go ahead and split everything up into smaller components, because if you look at everything basically at the same time, it's kind of confusing, it's kind of overwhelming, like there is a lot of things on the screen, where do we even start? But if we break it down into smaller components, basically in these Lego blocks that we can then put together, then it's gonna make a lot more sense and it's gonna be easier for us to implement. So yeah, I do this even up to this day when I have basically a design and I have to implement the user interface. Like first things first, I start drawing boxes on top of a design to see how everything maps to components. So in this guide on notjust.dev, if you scroll down, that's what I did here. I drew boxes around main components on the screen in order for me to, in order to make our job easier in the next steps. So let's go ahead and see what is basically our page is made of. Our page is made of multiple containers, these blue boxes. So the first container is basically our header. Our header is made up of two columns. On the left, we have some information about the car. On the right, we have the icon for the profile. Okay, that's already more manageable if we focus only on this header. Then we will have an image container as the next component here. The second box. The third box is a row with multiple icons. These green boxes are simple icons that are displayed in this container. And lastly, on the bottom, we have a fourth main component on this page, which logically speaking is a list of menu options. And this list renders multiple menu options. And if we look at one menu option, the pink box 4.1, one menu option is basically contains three components. On the left, it has an icon, then it has the name of the option, and on the right, it has basically an arrow that indicates like, hey, you can press here to navigate to another screen. So now if we think into these smaller components and start building from that, from the smallest component up, it's going to be much easier for us to implement. So let's go ahead and start from the top, and we're going to start with the header here. So as we said, the header is a container, and a container in React Native is a view. And we have on the left some information about the car, and on the right we have an icon. Okay, perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and actually I'm going to work based on what we have here at the moment. So we have a main box here that I can rename the styles for this one to header. And we have a text for the title. I'm gonna rename the hello world to basically my model S. And for the subtitle, I'm going to rename it to the status of a car. So for example, parked here. We see the text changed on our device, but let's go ahead and now scroll down into our styles and style these components. So for example, we were not gonna have a main box here, so let's remove the styles for the main, but we're gonna have some styles for the header. We're gonna see in a moment what styles does the header need. But for example, for the title, the size 64 is too much, so let's put it 24, and let's choose a color. What? The color should be EEE. So that's a very light gray there. Let's not forget to put a comma after that. Okay. It looks that our title disappeared, but in fact it didn't disappear. It just was moved behind the notch of our iOS. So I'm going to simply do a hack here, and for the header I'm going to put some margin on the top, like 50 pixels, and that will move our header below the notch. Okay, perfect. Now, what else we have here? For the subtitle, again, the font size, we will remove it, we will leave it by default. The color, let's use the gray color there, like this, and we will make the font a little bit bolder. So to do that, we're gonna use a property font weight, and here you can specify all these values, bold, normal, and so on, or one of these 100, 200, and so on. So a bold is 700, but that's gonna be too bold, so I'm gonna use probably something in between the normal and bold, which is 500. Okay, perfect. At the moment, everything is centered in the middle. However, we want it to start from the beginning. It's centered in the middle because our container has this align item center. So let's go ahead and remove this from here. And now it should be better. It should start from the left. Okay, I think what's left is to add some space between these titles, and one way to do that is to add some margin bottom to the title, and we're gonna go with 8 pixels between the texts. Okay, perfect. Now it looks much better. The next step is to render an icon. There is a package called Expo Vector Icons, and you can Google Expo Vector Icons. And this is the first URL that I see here, which is a list of a lot of icons that you can use in your application. So for example, you can search for a user icon, and I need something like user circle from Font Awesome, like this one. So let's click on this, and it already explains us how we can import and use the icon in our application. So let's go ahead and copy this import statement and put it at the top of our file. And let's copy the way we render this icon, and let's put it after the text parked there. Okay, we see the icon, but if we change the color to gray, it's gonna look way better. Perfect. And probably the size should be also bigger, 30. Okay, that's good. The thing is that in our user interface, we see that the texts from the left and the icon, they should be basically in the same row. They shouldn't be one on top of each other. So how do we accomplish that? To change the direction of how things are rendered on the screen, we will work with the styles for the parent component, for example, for this header. And in the header, we can specify flex direction. And how do we want to render them? We want to render them in the same row. So let's do flex direction row. Okay, perfect. Now everything is in the same row. But again, if we look back to our design, we wanted the text to be on top of each other. So how can we make these two texts be on top of each other, and in the same line with the icon? Well, we can put these two texts in another container in their own box. And if I do just like that, without any styles, without anything, the styles for a view are to display in a column by default, the direction. So now the texts are displayed one on top of each other, and on the right of this view, we have the icon. And that's actually logically what we see here in the breakdown. We have a green box that contains our texts, and we have another green box for the icon. Now the last thing is that we want the icon to be displayed on the right of this container. So for that, we will specify how should the container header manage the space that is not used. So for example, let's do justify content. And if we say that we want this space to be between the elements, then our items will move to two different parts of the screen. And if we have three items there, they will all move to leave the space between them. Also, we can put space around, for example, to make the space around them, or space evenly. So all of these are possible options, or even using justify content, we can do flex or center, for example, and all of them will be in the center. What we are interested in is the space between, and we will remove the unnecessary icon from there to leave only one icon. Perfect. And with this being said, we are finished with our header. We're gonna skip this icon for now. We're gonna go to the next step to work with images and see how we can render images on the screen. How are you doing, guys, in the chat? Are you following along? We see new people joining us. So a little recap for everyone that is just joining. Today we are building the Tesla application with React Native using Expo. So this Tesla application we have built in the past on the channel. If you are not new here, you might know that Tesla clone. That was a beginner-friendly project, but that was simply building the web interface or the website of Tesla as a mobile application. Today, however, we are building the Tesla application that controls the car. So yeah, I really want to experience this and to feel that I own a Tesla, to have an opportunity to play with a Tesla application. So because I don't have a Tesla yet, I'm going to build the application myself, and I'm going to teach you how you can do it as well. Hello, Uganda. Hello from Indonesia. Hello, guys. I see a tip from Sniper. That's a very good tip. If you still see the black Expo screen after touching the touch up, the button, what you have to do is to restart the Expo server. So yeah, that's a good tip. For example, if after getting started, and after creating this app index file, you do not see the actual page, you have to restart the server. And how you can do that? In your terminal, go ahead and press Ctrl+C to stop the server. Then you can do npm start, and also what I recommend is adding --, then a space, --, clear, and this will clear the cache and restart the server in a clean way. So now press I again to open it on iOS, and everything should be good to go. As you can see, it downloads the index.js again, so it's not cached. This is a very good tip as the first step to debug any kind of issue. If it's not working, try restarting the server. Thank you, Sniper, for the tip. Gerald is asking, if I'm using UI libraries like native-based style components and others. I try to style all the components myself. Usually, mobile applications do not require crazy styles. And at this point, like, it takes me much less time to write the styles myself, write reusable components, and use them in my application than to integrate with an external library for that. What is your name? Yeah, my name is Vadim. Hi, welcome to the channel. If you're new here, we're doing project-based tutorials like this every single Friday. So if you are interested in building mobile application, make sure to subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell not to miss any future videos. We are doing this every single Friday. In Android, it's not going from welcome to expo page to hello world. Yeah, try to restart the server as I showed you just now. Okay. So, for the next step, we will actually need this image. The image, I have prepared the asset bundle that you can also download from the description of this video. So if you go in the description down below, you will also see the get asset bundle, and go ahead and download the assets, because that will include the image and other files that you will need to follow this tutorial. So let me grab my assets. Give me just 1 second. YouTube, live stream, Tesla application, and Tesla bundle. Okay, so after downloading and unzipping the folder with the asset bundle, oh no, please. That's what you should see. You should see a folder with the actual assets, and here there will be images, and there will be some dummy data for the next steps. So what we have to do is just simply grab this asset folder and drop it in the root directory. So hover over the bottom part here and do copy folder, and that will contain the assets here in your root directory of your project. So we have a car image that we will want to display. So as the first step to render an image, we will have to import this image. So let's import car from a directory up, then assets, then images, and then car.png. We will also need an image component that we can import from React Native. So for that, import from React Native the image component. And let's go ahead and using the image component, render this car PNG. So for that, after the header, after this view of the header, let's do it like this. Let's go ahead and render the image. This image requires one property basically. That's the source. And the source, in this case, we're gonna use the car. It can be a local image, or it can also be a remote image. To render remote images, you simply put it into an object and render the URI here as HTTPS and so on for a publicly accessible image. In our case, we will render this car image, and by doing that, we right away should see it on the screen, but only the front of it. Why? Well, because it's trying to render it in the full size as the car image is there. In case you're rendering a remote image, you will not see it at all, because we have to provide some styles for this image. So let's provide styles image, and let's specify how we want to to resize this image. So for the image, what I want to do is I want to have it to be full width of the screen. So for the width, it's easy. We can do 100%, just like that. Now, as you can see, the car is not fully visible, and that's handled by the resize mode property of our image. So resize mode by default has the value of cover, and that will try to cover the whole area that it is rendered in. That means that some of the parts of the image will be lost because it tries to stretch to cover everything. Another property that you can, another resize mode is contain. And in case your image should be rendered fully, in that case, you should use the resize mode contain, as we see here. But now the problem is, it looks good here, but if I add the a background color for you to see how it looks, for example, blue, come on, we see that this image stretches from top to bottom. So we need to specify the height as well. And for the height, I'm gonna specify a fixed height of 300 pixels to render it here on the top. I'm gonna remove the background color blue, and just like that, we are rendering the car here on the top. And that's actually a good point. From the new version of Expo SDK and from the new version of React Native, actually, from 0.71, instead of source, you can use SRC. Let me see if that's possible. But that's only for URLs, right? Yeah, for URLs, you can use SRC. Come on. Okay, perfect. So we have our image on the screen. Our application already starts to look a bit better. We see some images, some text, some icons. And the next step in our application, if we look here, is the third container here. And this third container contains a list of icons. So what we will have to do is, after the image of a car, we are going to have a view. And inside this view, we will have multiple icons. You can go ahead and search for this for the icons on icons.expo.fyi. However, I already did that. I have prepared all the icons that you will need. So if you follow the guide, you will see them here. So first of all, let's go ahead and grab the import statement for these icons at the top here. And I'm going to replace the current import statement of Font Awesome with the one that I copied from there. That includes other font families as well. And I'm going to copy this view with the controls, or maybe only the icon. Let me do everything. And I'm going to replace my view with our controls. Right away, we see the icons displayed on the screen. They are on top of each other. That's because we didn't specify the styles for the controls row. So let's go ahead and specify the styles. So when we want to render them in the same row, what should we do? That's correct. We are using flex direction and the property row because we want icons to be in the same row. Now, when we want to spread them apart in the container that they are displayed in, we are using the justify content, and we can go with space around, and that will put space, basically space around the icons. You can, if you put space between, in that case, the first icon and the last icon will touch the borders, and in the design, that's not how it looks. So that's why you need the space around. space around. Looks much better. Okay, and just like that, we have a list of icons displayed on the screen. Okay, what's next? What's next? The next step is our fourth container, and the fourth container is our list of options. Before we jump into learning how we can render lists of options, let's first build one single options of this list, and then we're gonna see how we can replicate that component multiple times for different options. So we're gonna start with the component 4.1 here in the breakdown, the pink one, and what will it contain? So basically it's a container with an icon on the left, a text for the name, and on the right we have another icon there. Okay, knowing that, let's go ahead and under the controls here, let's start rendering this option, menu option item or menu option item. So menu option, as I said, it's a container. So for that we have a view. Let's give this view right away a style, and the style will be styles.option row. And inside it contains an icon, then it contains a text, then it contains another icon there. So for the for the first icon, it should be a car. So I'm going to use which one? I think I'm going to use for all of them the material community icons. So yeah, let's go with material community icons. Make sure it is imported from vector icons here. The icon name here is going to be car. The size 26 and color gray. Okay, we have an icon there. For the text, we're gonna render a text saying controls. And the last icon here is from material icons, not material community icons, but material icons. For the name, let me actually copy it from here. Where is it? It's keyboard arrow right from material icons like this. Keyboard arrow right, 24 and gray. Make sure to import material icons as well. And yes, we see it there. What else? We will need some styles for this text. So let's give styles dot option text. And with this, let's go ahead and work on our styles to make this row actually look good. So for the options row and options text, option text, like this. I'm gonna start with option text because here we need to specify the color, and I'm gonna go with a similar color as our title, which is EEE, like this. I'm gonna increase a bit the font size to 18. Let's make it bold. So for the font weight, let's go with a bold font. Yeah, that is good. And the next step is to put everything in the same row. So on the option row, let's go ahead and add the flex direction row to render them in the same row. Now the controls are there. I would like to add some space between the icon and the text. So on the text, I'm gonna add margin left 10. Yes, that adds a bit of space there. On the option row, I want some vertical margin between different rows. So let's go ahead and add margin vertical. It can even be 20. And what else? It's very subtle, but this problem, if I increase the size of one of these icons to, I don't know, 80, in that case, you will see that our items in this row, they are not horizontally aligned. To align them horizontally, in this option row, let's do align items center, and that will put all the items in this row in the same horizontal line. Now I can go back to the 26, or how much was it? 26, yeah. Now it looks better. And the way we moved the last icon to the right was a bit different. We specify margin left auto on the icon itself, and that put all the available space at the left of our icon here. So that's what moved it all the way to the right. Okay, so that's our menu option here. But the idea was to render a list of options, not just one. So how would you render multiple options? Well, one way would be, yeah, like you would take this one, you'll put it here, you'll change the names. The problem with this approach is we are repeating a lot of code. We're gonna handle this issue in a moment. But another problem is that usually these kind of things, they are dynamic. Basically, we have this information about all the buttons that we want to render, and we want to dynamically render them in a scrollable list. I have prepared for you the data for all our buttons, and if you look into the assets menu options, you see here a lot of buttons for the controls, for the climate, location, and so on. Every single button contains the name, it contains the icon name that we want to render, and it contains a URL for the page where we want to redirect. So let's go ahead and import these menu options in our index.js. Let's import it here, menu options from assets menu options. And in the next step, we're going to render them in a list. To render lists of items in React Native, we can use a flat list. A flat list, yeah, as I said, it allows us to render a list of items. It has a lot of other important features for use cases where you have infinitely scrollable lists, where you scroll, then as you move down, it automatically loads more items. So all of these are done with a flat list. But today we're gonna use a simple approach for the flat list. So above this menu option, let's start rendering the flat list. So flat list is here. What properties does a flat list need? It needs two required properties. It needs to know what data it should render, and for that it has a property data. So for the data, we're gonna send our menu options, and this data, the variable that we send to the data should be an array of items. If we look here in the menu options, this is indeed an array of multiple items. Now the flat list also needs to know how should it render one single item. So for that, it has a function, it has a property render item. And in this render item, we need to give it a function that will indicate how it should render one item. So let's do the function here. It will return something. And what should be one item? Well, it should be all of this view that we defined here. So I'm going to remove a comment and I'm going to take only the view with the option row. Just like that. And just like that, we see a list with a lot of controls. So let's repeat. Like a flat list is a component that allows us to render list of item, and it needs two important information. It needs an array of items to be rendered and a function that specifies how to render one single item. The next step is, like we don't want to render controls for every single item because we want to render the name that is coming from our data array. And this name is, like we have for all of them. Okay, the render item function will contain some properties. And one of these is the item that is currently rendering. So we can destructure it here. And then we can simply render, instead of controls, we can render item.name. Pay attention to the curly brackets, because if you don't have a curly brackets, it will literally say item name all over the place here. If we put this into arrow brackets, this will allow us to execute JavaScript expressions, and we're simply taking the name from the item that we are rendering at the moment. So as we can see, it's control, climate, location, summon, and so on, all the way down. All right. Another dynamic property that is coming from the data is the icon name. So let's do the same for the icon name here. Instead of rendering car, let's put the curly brackets here and render item.icon name. And now all the icons are custom to the option that we are trying to render. So, for these controls, I'm going to add a bit more vertical space. So for the controls, I'm going to do margin vertical, I don't know, 20. Yes, now it looks better. So now we can scroll through this list of items. You can add more of them. I didn't have time to add even more. But yeah, that's how you build scrollable lists. And this is just the beginning of flat list. Like there is a lot of options we can adjust for the flat list. So for example, if you want to get rid of the scroll bar that is visible on the right, you can give a property here to the flat list called show horizontal, not horizontal, but vertical scroll indicator. And you can send a false value to disable this scroll indicator. And now it's a bit more cleaner user interface. The next problem that I want to show is, our index.js file is getting quite big, as we can see. And at the moment, this might be still okay. It's still kind of manageable. But you can imagine that if we continue in this way and add more features to the same file, our code will become messy. It will become quite long. And that leads to code that is hard to manage, code that is hard to maintain, and very hard to upgrade or update, like adding new features. Because every time you come to this file, you're going to have to understand how everything works all over again. So the solution for this problem is to split our code into reusable components, into smaller components that we can reuse in our application. The first step, like the the rule of thumb, every time you have a flat list, instead of defining how should one item look in that flat list, you should think already about like, hey, this item should be a custom component because it is reused multiple times in the flat list to render. And by separating it into a custom component, your flat list will right away look way more clean. So how do we take our component in a custom component basically? Let's start by scrolling up before our function page, and let's define the custom component for the menu option. For that, I'm going to use an arrow function. So let's do const menu option is equal to a function. This is what makes a component. This function should return some JSX. What JSX? Well, basically this view with our option row. So let's take it from here and return it in our menu option like this. Come on. Why it's not? Why it's not aligning? Should align like this. The problem is that at the moment we do not have this item here, but we will be able to send the item to our menu option through properties, and the properties are the variable that we received in this component. So let's grab the item from here, item, and we will be able to use it as we were using before. Now, if we scroll down to the flat list, I'm gonna delete everything from the render item, and I'm gonna say for the way to render the item, basically use the menu option component. If I save, we are back to how it was before, but now our flat list is much more readable. Like we see, okay, this flat list has some data. It has the menu option as the render method for one item. And if we need to go into more details about how it is rendered, like the menu option, we go into that component and we do changes here. And this way, it's much more structured. We can go one way further. And usually the rule of thumb is to have one component per file. So that means that at the moment, this file is basically specific to our page, and it's advisable to take this menu option into its own file. It should have its own place where it lives. For that, I'm gonna go ahead and create a new folder called components in the root directory. And in the components, I'm going to create a new file called menu option.js. Let's go ahead and bring the menu option from our index.js to our file here. Let's go ahead and export it right away because we will need to import it in other places. So export default menu option. And we need to make sure to import all of these view, material, icons, and so on. The easiest way for me is going to be to basically copy all the import statements for index.js to menu option.js and then remove what is not used. For example, VS Code shows me with gray the things that are not used. So I can remove this car, menu options. I can remove icons that are not used here and the components from React Native that are not used here. I will save and we are left with this component. Still, we need the styles. We do not have the styles here. Let's take the same approach. Let's go to the index.js. Let's copy all the styles from here and bring them to menu option as well. But in the menu option, we don't need all of the styles. We need only the styles for option row and option text. So the rest of the styles we can delete from here. Come on, delete. And also make sure to import style sheet from React Native because we deleted it. Just like that, we have everything here, and the menu option component is already a self-contained independent component that lives in a separate function, and this way we can import it from different places in our application. For example, from index.js, we can import menu option from components menu option, and our application will work as it was working before. But this time, like, the component is in a separate file, and yeah, it's independent. The last step, I want to, in the index.js, to scroll down until the option row and option text, because we don't need the styles here anymore as we move them to the menu option styles. Okay, perfect. So that's that was the first way, like the first custom component that we saw, how we can take it out into a separate custom component. You can go one step further and try to do the same yourself, for example, for the controls. So let's go ahead and repeat the steps. So the first step is, okay, let's define the a separate component that will render our controls row. So let's call it controls. It should return something. It should return some JSX to render. I'm gonna copy these controls from here. We're gonna render them here. And the way, like why I did that is I want to show how we can render these controls inside our page. To render it, we render it in a similar way as how we were working with images, with flat list and so on. We simply put it inside the brackets, controls. We self-close it because we do not send any children to it. It's a self-closing tag. By doing that, we see the controls back on the screen. So yeah, you can go ahead and extract it to a separate component as well. I'm gonna leave it probably here. Another thing that I wanted to show you here is the way our list is scrollable. So at the moment we see that everything on the top remains on the top of the screen and only the bottom part is kind of scrollable. If you want the top to scroll together with your list, what you can do is you can send to the flat list a list header component. And if we send the controls to the list header component, and then we have to comment out when we render it, in this situation, our controls will scroll together with our list, as you can see here. And you can go one step more and add the image inside that component, or create another component that will render them. If you do the image here, you'll also have to add a fragment tag, like an empty tag, because when we return something, we should return one single JSX tag that contains multiple children. So if we put the image in the controls, now when we scroll, the image will scroll together with the list, as you can see. So this is up to you how you want to implement it for the application, but just know that it is possible to adjust what are the scrollable parts by putting it into the list header component, or even list footer component if you want to render something on the bottom of a screen. And this header component will move together with our items that are rendered in the flat list. And everything else that is rendered here, they will remain on the screen in the position as they were, just like this. Okay, so I don't know, should I leave the image there? I think I'll bring the image back here, and I'm gonna leave only the controls there. Yeah, I'm gonna leave the car there. Hello Vadim, can we build, how long time? Hello Vadim, long time, how are you? Hello, thank you very much, I'm very good. building an exciting project. So building that Tesla application. So far, I think, are finished with the home screen. We learned how to render, how to work with basic components like images, views, flat lists, how to render icons, and also how to style them in the way to look good on the screen, how to work with flexboxes, with positions, with margins, and so on. So yeah, as I said, with this, we are done with the with our home screen. We can take a small break, 2 minutes. I probably need to refill my water. Let me ask someone dear to me to do that. Alex, can you please fill some water? I'm here, guys. I'm here. And we can go through some of the chat messages to see if you enjoy this build, guys. Let me know. Let me know in the chat. I'm super excited about this kind of tutorials. If you have issue with not going from the welcome page to the hello world page, double check, like if you pressed on that button, make sure that a folder called app was created in your directory, and inside it a file index.js was created. If it was not created automatically, you can do that manually. Just go ahead and create a folder application, create an index file, and check out the code from the beginning and just simply export it there. If you have this app folder with the index file, but it's still showing the welcome screen, make sure to restart the development server. In this case, all your icons must use the same libraries. Yes, that's true. The way I implemented the icons, the dynamic icons here, I just simply specify the icon name, and with this approach, all my icons in the menu options, they are using the material community icons. I specifically use the material community icons because this is one icon package that contains a lot of icons, and it was enough for the use cases that we have. In cases where you want to have custom icons, that's also possible, and let me do it as a quick bonus for you right now. For example, if we want to render very different icons from different family, for example, from this and typo, right? Let's do this. Let's do this doctor from Font Awesome. So if we want to render this icon from one of the options, we will simply change a bit the way we are working. We are structuring the data in our menu options.js. So for one of them, like I'm gonna go at the end, let's do another option, name. And here, I don't know, doctor. And instead of icon name, I'm gonna send the icon itself. href, let's do /doctor. Now we need to import this font awesome at the top of this file. I'm gonna copy the import statement from here. Import statement from here, font awesome. Now our data contains not the name of icon, but the icon itself, the way we want to render the icon. So in the components menu option, what I can do is I can conditionally check if this item contains an icon. I will do it like this. If it contains, I'm going to use the question mark operator to provide the what should happen if it's true and what should happen if it's false. So if item contains the icon, we simply want to render the icon. Otherwise, and I think, no, the item icon. Otherwise, we're going to render the material community icons by using the icon name. And all of them are still working, but the last one is not the doctor. I think we should render it like this. Probably the icon will make it like this. Yes, and in this situation it should be gray. Yeah, and 24, 26. So right now you can see that all the other icons are using the material community icons because they do not contain a function called icon. That's why this check fails and it goes here in the material community icons. But for our last menu option, we provided a function, basically a custom component that renders the icon that we want to render. And we used a different font family for that. So in this situation, the item.icon was defined and we simply render it like this. Grab some water, stay hydrated. That's right. Don't forget to drink water. The Ugandans are present. Hello. Cameroon, hello. Hello, Vadim, your tutorials are always great and provide a lot of learning stuff. Thank you very much, I really appreciate that. Speaking about tutorials, let's move on to the next step. Because in the next step, I want to show you how we can actually navigate in our application. So what we want to do is every time we press on one of these icons here, we should go to a different screen. We should be navigating to a different screen. As I said in the beginning, we are using Expo Router. And Expo Router, first of all, for every file in the application folder, it creates a screen that we can navigate to. This part we're going to cover shortly, but now I want to explain you how we can navigate to those screens, how we can link to the screens. So let's start by trying to implement whenever we press on this controls text, we want to redirect to a screen that has the location that we specify here in the items. So for every menu option, we also have a link where we want to redirect /controls/climate/location. And this is possible because we are using Expo Router and it handles the URLs in a similar way as we handle them on web. Okay, let's go ahead in the menu option and we're going to import the component link from Expo Router. This link component allows us to link towards different screens. So I'm going to replace our text, this item name text. Instead of text, I'm going to say this is a link. Nothing changed, but now I can provide the href, and the href will come from our item href, the location we want to redirect to. Now if I'm going to press on controls, Nothing happens. No, now we see unmatched route. Page could not be found, but we see that it actually tried to go to this controls page. The problem is that we don't have this page yet. So that's okay. That's what should happen. I just wanted to show you how we can navigate to different locations, and it's happening as we see here. To do that, we simply use a link component from Expo Router, and the link component will render a text component inside, and whenever we press on that component, it will try to go to that page, to the page from the href. Okay, but we don't want to go to that page only when we press on the text. We want to go to the page even if we press on the icon or the whole row. So when we press on this whole row. Okay, we learned that a link component will render a text component inside. Okay, but we can also encapsulate other components as well inside this link. So if we do link here, I'm gonna move a link from the text. Let me move it to the top, link href item.href. I'm gonna encapsulate everything in this link. And for the text, I'm gonna actually go back to the text because now our whole container will be clickable, so I can leave it as a text there. Well, at the moment, nothing will happen. And our styles messed up badly. Why? Because as I said, the link will render the children inside a text component. If we want to prevent that, we can say as child, and then link will use the next component, this view, as the children, and will not render it inside a text component. So if I save now and refresh, the style should be fixed. But if I press, still nothing happens. And that's because when we are using as child, the first child of a link should be a component that can handle press events, because the link will pass there props like on press, and yeah, basically this view should handle press events. A view in React Native does not have an on press event. For that, we have a separate component called pressable that we can import from React Native, and that we can simply replace the view with. And a pressable is the same view, but it has these properties on press, on which the link depends. So if I do it like this, now if I'm gonna click on it, I need to refresh. Now if I'm gonna click on it, we go there. And not only on the text, but also on the icons, or basically in this empty space as well. So now our whole container serves as a link. And this is how we can use the link component, either to have simple text links or to have huge components as pressable components that are linking to a different page. Okay, hopefully this way, step by step, showing you how to go from a text to a link to as child and why we need pressable. This way it made sense, like how everything is interconnected. But yeah, right now we are able to navigate to different screens. As I said, the problem that we see right now, for example, if we press on the climate, is the unmatched route. This is already good because in other scenarios, we would get an error in the application if we're trying to redirect to a page that doesn't exist. The good thing is that Expo Router automatically manages the links that are not found and are displaying a kind of useful page without crashing the application at all. I really like that about the Expo Router. Now the next step is let's go ahead and actually create pages for some of our options. If I look in the menu options, I'm gonna go ahead and implement the page for this climate. As we see, the href is /climate, and that means that we have to create a file inside our app directory called climate.js. In this file, go ahead and copy the empty component. Where is it? Yeah, here, climate screen. Copy this empty component here. I think you can also add style like flex1 and align items center to see this text in the middle of the screen. And now if we press on the second option, climate, we still see this one, but if we refresh the application and press again, we see climate there, and I think I need to do justify content center as well. And we see climate here. We're not able to go back yet, but we can refresh the page, and that will move us back here. So, to recap, simply creating a file climate in our app folder, Export Router automatically created this route in our application. And because in our menu options we have one route that are redirecting to this /climate, we are able to go to this page there. If you press R, that's gonna reload the application to go back to the home screen. And in a similar way, you can go ahead and create the other screens, for example, controls.js, location.js, summon.js, and so on, for every single page that we have, that we need in the application. Okay. For the climate page, I actually prepared this as an assignment for you. It's time to practice, and I want you to at least give it a try and implement this page yourself. For the user interface that should be on this page, you can see it in the guide. And let's break it down together. Then you can stop the video, pause the video, try to implement it yourself, and after that come back and see how the way I implemented it. And you're gonna be able to compare. I think this is the best way you can improve your skills as a mobile developer and try to actually understand if the concept that you learned today makes sense. If everything makes sense, if you forget something, you can go back in the video, try to do it, try to find the solution yourself before looking in the solution code. Because this screen does not have anything extra except the things that we already learned. It renders an image on the top, then it has a container on the bottom. That container has like a text, then it has another row that contains basically 3 columns. The first one is the on-off button, the last one is the vent, and these two are very similar. In the middle it contains a different column that renders an icon, a text, and an icon. So, with this being said, go ahead, try to do it yourself. And yeah, you can do it right now. Pause the video, and we're gonna see each other in probably 30 minutes. Spend a bit of time, try to do it yourself. I promise you're gonna learn a lot more by doing it yourself than just copy-pasting the code from here. Now, when you're back, we can go ahead and see the solution that I have prepared for you. And I don't want to spend a lot of time on implementing the user interface of this screen, because there is still one more topic that I want to teach today. And that topic is about state. So let's go ahead and copy the code for this screen from the guide in our climate screen. And then I'm going to explain how to work with state. So I copy the code here, and we have the solution. Before we jump into the next step, I want to go through the code and explain a bit my thought process. And as I said, from the top, we start with an image. This image was provided in the assets here for the climate, and it contains some styles. For the styles, we are rendering the width and height in percentage, so it looks like this. The next one, the pressable, you can ignore it for a bit because even if you didn't implement it yourself, that's not a problem. That's not the biggest part of the user interface. But for me, this pressable was created in order to provide a back button. And we can go to climate, we can go back, and so on. If we look at the styles for this back button, we see that it is positioned absolute in order to display it on top of everything else. So it's displayed in the top left corner based on these pixels. Yeah, that's the main things that you need to know there. The functionalities to go back, we did that using the router, and what we did to implement the go back function is we imported the use router hook from expo router. We got access to the router in the body of our component here, and we call the router.back whenever we press on this container. And yeah, now by pressing on the icon, we are going back. Then in the climate, we have another big container that represents our footer and contains all the information here on the bottom. The way I made it be aligned at the bottom of the screen, if we look at the styles footer, I provided a margin top auto. Without this, the footer will come right after the image, but we wanted it to be at the bottom of the screen. Now the footer is made up of basically the text for interior 74, exterior 66, and then another row for our controls. This controls is another view, and it contains 3 columns. The first one for the on-off button. The last one, in a similar way as we did the first one, it's the vent button. And in the middle, we have a different one where we have an icon for the left button, the temperature, and the right button. So I hope that even if you didn't manage to build it perfectly, pixel perfect as it was in the user interface, you've got some of these things right, and what's most important, you learn some of the things. The goal for these assignments is to go through these aha moments, and that's where actually you do the most learning. When something doesn't make sense and then you're like, oh, that's how it works, or that's why we need a flex direction on this row. That's why we need that. And when that clicks, like you basically understand, and you will be able to replicate the same scenarios over and over again in your applications as well. So, as I said, I really want to show one more very important topic for building mobile applications. And that is how to manage state. So, why do we need state? Well, basically we need state to keep track of information, of data that is managed in our application. Because now our application simply renders things. It does not update anything, we are not able to interact with it, and so on. So, for example, when we press on these buttons here, what we want to happen is we want to change the temperature that we are setting here. So, temperature is a state variable. A state variable you cannot define the state variable like this, temperature equal 68, and then try to update it this way. You cannot do this because in this way, React doesn't know whenever the state variable changes. But the way React works behind the scenes is every time some state changes, React basically re-renders the component again on the screen to reflect the data that was changed. So because we cannot do it like this, what we should do is we should use the useState hook that we import from React. Now, in the body of our component, here somewhere on the top, we need to define the state for our temperature. And we're gonna do this by, we're gonna get the temperature state and the setter, set temperature, from the useState hook. The useState hook will define this state variable. How to write temperature temp? I was doing temperature in the head to get it. That's what happens when English is not your main language. What I wanted to say is that in the useState, in this bracket, you can define the default value. So we can define 68 as the default value, or let's do 72. Now, useState gives us back a tuple, an array of two values. And the first value is the actual value of our state, and that's why we called it temperature here. The second one is a function that allows us to change, to update the state variable. Let's go ahead and first use the value of this state, this temperature, by displaying it on the screen. So I'm gonna scroll down until we see this 68, and instead of 68, I'm gonna say it should be temperature. And right away we see 72 on the screen. And if you change it here to, I don't know, 10, you see it updating on the screen. Okay, but we want to update it whenever we press on these buttons. So how do we do that? Well, on these icons, the icons, good for us, they have an onPress event. So onPress, we're going to define a function, and what we should do, we should call the set temperature to update the temperature, and basically what we're going to do is we're going to use the temperature plus 1 to increase the temperature. No, here we should do -1. And in the next icon, we should do +1. Now, if I'm going to try to press on these buttons, we see that we can adjust the temperature by clicking on these items, and it will update it as we expect. And that's how you use state to basically have data that updates in your application, and that will automatically re-render your application to display it on the screen. Go ahead and try to do the same things for the on-off button. What you want to do is you want to define a Boolean state value, not an integer, that will contain true or false, whether the button is pressed or not. Then, based on the value of that Boolean, go ahead and change the text that is rendered here in the button, on or off. So pause the video, try to do it yourself, based on the example that we already have, and then come back and let's try to do it together. So what we have, we need to define a new state variable. I don't know, should we call it on? Yeah, let's do on. And the setter will be set on. Set on. We're gonna use the useState hook to define this state variable. We need to initialize it. We will initialize it with, let's initialize it with false to make it false by default. And where we are rendering this on, Instead of rendering the on, I'm going to use a question mark operator to render if our state variable is on. We need to say, I don't know, on. Otherwise, we need to say off. And nothing happens at the moment. We need to, when we press on this container, we need to switch from on to off and from off to on. We can do that on the material icons on the on press event here. And we're gonna say when we press on this icon, we basically want to invert what the state value that we currently have. If it's true, we want to set it to false. If it's false, we want to set it to true. Now, if I'm gonna do, we see on, off, on, off. Okay. Another step, I think I would like to make this on press event on the whole container. So for that reason, I'm gonna make it a pressable, and I'm gonna put this on press event on this container, so that now the whole container is clickable. And also, I'm going to change the color of the icon based on this value. So if it's on, the color will be white. If it's off, the color will be gray. Yeah, just like that. It's off. We press, it's on. It's off, it's on. And we can do that as well for the vent. I'm not gonna repeat because that process is kind of completely the same, so you can try to do it yourself. This time, you're going to work with a Boolean state value as well for the vent, and you can add the on press event there on the icon. And yeah, that's how we work with state in React Native. Alright guys, so that was it for today. I hope you enjoyed this project build tutorial. I'm gonna go through some of the comments to see if you have some interesting questions. We can cover them now. But yeah, if you enjoyed this, make sure to subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, not to miss our builds. We are going live every single Friday with a fire build like this, where you learn full stack mobile development. And yeah, the goal of this channel is to help you learn and be able to build end-to-end applications by yourself. So if you have ideas of some side projects, if you have crazy ideas of building some startups or revolutionizing the world with your code, that means that you are a Node.js developer. Welcome to this community. We're all here trying to change the world through code, and I'd be happy to help you in your journey. How did you find this build, guys? Let me know. Let me know also in the comments below if you're watching this after the live stream. Sniper is asking, does this mean that naming convention for files being in screen folder will not work for export router? It depends. What do you mean? Like the files, the file names reflect the name of the path of the URLs. However, if I'm gonna change this to climate with capital C, if that's what you mean, like if you want to have capitalized file names, in that situation, if I refresh the page, it will still work because yeah, it works. However, if you have a name climate control, in that situation, I'm gonna refresh. That's very important. If I'm gonna press on the climate, it still goes here. I think I have to reload it properly and to take this to take in effect, because it shouldn't. I'm gonna restart the server with clear. Sometimes the caching doesn't work properly, but what I'm trying to show is that if the file name is different, then this should also be reflected in the path where you're trying to navigate to. So if I'm gonna try to press climate now, we see unmatched route. So make sure that the name of a file corresponds with the href here, climate control. If I do it like this, climate, I think it should be with. Yes, now it works. And I think it actually is case sensitive. Yes, it is case sensitive. So the href should be the same string with the same case as it is the file name. I'm gonna move back to climate. Climate back, perfect. Let me do one bonus feature. I'm not sure if that's really important, but Export Router offers a possibility for us to adjust the layout of groups of screens. Where is this useful? This is useful when we have some parts of a UI that should be reused in multiple screens. For example, think about a tab navigation. The tabs on the top, this is part of a UI that should be reused across multiple tabs. This is part of a layout. So when you have this kind of requirements, for example, in the application, let's create a new file called _layout.js, and this layout will be rendered as the layout for all our pages, like climate, index, and so on. So if I'm gonna do React Native functional export here, to have a layout like this, let me check the Expo router for the full documentation, because I think I need to render them. I need the children there, right? Let me figure this out. Come on. Yeah, so what I'm gonna, where this layout is useful is to render stack navigators, for example, or types of navigators. So one of the navigator is this stack navigator, so we can import stack from Export Router, and we can render it here, stack simply. And by doing this, we already see the titles of our pages. So if I go to the climate, we see climate here. And if we go back, we see index. So again, Export Router is built on top of React Navigation. And if you're familiar with how React Navigation works, you're going to be familiar with how to adjust things here. For example, in the layout, if we want to change the name, the title of the index page, we can do that by specifying some parameters for the stack screen. We need to specify the name of a file, for example, index, and in the options we can say title should be home. Come on. So now the title for this page is home. For the stack, you can also use screen options. You can use, how's it called? Status bar style or header or content style? Header style. I think header style, if I do background color red, Will it change? Color. Yes, so it changes the color of the header style, so I can go ahead and put the same color as we had there. Where is it? This one. But in this situation, we have headers automatically from the stack screen. And for the header style, for the title style, well, basically, there is a lot of ways you can adjust this. I wanted to say header shown false because I want to hide the header and go back to how it was before without a header. But what I want to do is I want to adjust the status bar, the color of the status bar. And the status bar receives their style. So status bar style equal dark. Light, how is it? Come on, style. Light. Why it's not working? Come on, expo status bar. I want to change the color of the status bar at the top because now it's black on black and it's not visible. Expo status bar. And maybe it's managed by the navigator, by the stack navigator. I don't know. Yeah, it should be status bar light. I saw here status bar color. I don't know. It doesn't work. If I change it from the screen itself, will it work? Climate, yeah, from the screen itself it works. I don't know why here it didn't. Maybe it should be outside the stack. Yeah, it actually should be outside the stack. Yeah. Inside the stack, we only should have stack screens. So that's why it was not working for me. But if I put the status bar here at the outside the stack, inside the layout, now it's light here on the home screen, it's light in the climate screen, so it works as expected. And that's how you can add code that kinda repeats and should be used in different screens. So this layout is going to be imported in all of this climate index and used here. That's also where you can put all your providers, for example, a context provider or some components that should wrap your whole application. That's where it should go in the root layout. I just joined. Am I too late? Yes, we have just finished the build. We're going for some extra bonus tips here, but the video is going to be published on the channel, so you can check it out, watch it. It's going to be available. Thank you. Have been a while. I follow your tutorials. That's great. Amazing. Welcome back. Oh, you mean having screens folder? Yeah, the way Explorator works is specifically with this app folder in the root directory. Maybe in future it's going to be, we're going to be able to adjust the way what folder should be used for the screens. And in this situation, we can have our src directory and so on. But now, yeah, just have them app folder in the root directory of your project that's required for the export router. It's very great work. Looking forward to build something as fast as you did from India. Don't don't get this wrong. Like, I have prepared for this build. It's not that I'm writing everything like with this speed, like in 1 hour. And as well, it took me more than 8 years to get to this point. So it takes a lot of experience to get to a point where you'll be able to do this, but this should not stop you from starting, stop you from building applications. Even if it's gonna take you a lot of time. Like, I remember in the beginning of my journey, I had a lot of moments where I was spending weeks, not days, not hours, but weeks with some simple bugs. I remember I was working for a client and I had a very simple bug. I didn't know how to run a project. And I was asking like our developers, and everyone was so like, oh, you should first like learn the basics and then you're gonna know that. It was using Docker and I simply didn't know like how to put it together. Like, show me how to do it and then I'm gonna develop it. And I spent like weeks just to understand like how to run that project. And I was going crazy, like literally like for a lot of time, like I just couldn't make it work. But yeah, going through these moments, like the more experience you gain, the less of these moments you're gonna have. Still up to these days, like there are some bugs that I spend a lot of time debugging and trying to understand, but it's a bit easier to navigate and to understand where it's coming from. That's the first step. Like, go ahead and try to understand where the bug is coming from, and then think why it's happening and how we should solve it. Swipe to back functionality. Let me actually see that on a real device. I think it has, because it's using the export navigation, and it should work. Oh, actually, I can show you on the here as well. Like, it's working out of a box. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. Like this. Hello, Devendra. I'm good, thank you. We just finished a very exciting build. You must watch it afterwards. Hey, welcome to the Notjust developer community. Thank you very much, Sniper, for supporting our YouTube channel. That means a lot for the whole team. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. All right, guys. So if you want, we can continue the discussion on social medias. Write me on Twitter. I'm there, Vadim at notjust.dev or at Vadim notjust.dev. So for now, I'm gonna go start my weekend. I wish you a very productive weekend if that's your goal. Go ahead and implement this application. Try to do the assignments that we have here yourself. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this one. Till next Friday, where we're gonna build another exciting project. Okay, guys, thank you. Bye-bye.